Okay. Dr. Richard Arias-Hernandez is an associate professor of teaching at the School of Information at UBC, focusing on digital libraries, digital collections, information systems, information visualization, data management, analytics, and visualization at the iSchool graduate programs and in the Bachelor of Media Studies. His current research focuses on curriculum design for archival studies programs to leverage and incorporate artificial intelligence and machine learning into archival and records management practices. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Corinne. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here joining you guys today. I'm going to be speaking during the next 20 minutes or so about one of the studies mentioned by Dr. Duranti in her introduction. And it's a study that focuses on education. And the broader title of the project is called Teachable AI for Academic Professions. But today I'm going to be focusing on a recent development in the project, which is the development of competencies for archival professionals regarding AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. First of all, an acknowledgement. This is the result of a team project. It's teamwork. Several people have been involved, either as GRAs. Currently, Kyla Fuster. She's also my co-author in the papers that we're writing. And our former student, Sophie Pennyman, who was in charge of the interviews for this project, and also in the beginning of the analysis. But also some research collaborators who are going to be very actively testing the educational modules that we're developing, so that we can have also feedbacks of how these educational modules actually work in training grounds. We had participants providing their insights for the development of these competencies. Those names are right there. And also professionals who have been involved in the validation in workshops that we conducted this summer at ACA and Expo Tecnología 2024 in Medellin, Colombia. The inspiration for focusing on education regarding AI and ML, obviously we need to get started asking, do we need more training? Do we need more education? There's a lot of stuff that is already being included in our CAPA programs today. Do we need to include more, right? Do we need to update our training and competences as educators? Do we need to include more in our curricula? Do we need to provide workshops for professional development? There's a lot of training available on AI and machine learning. You just Google. You're going to find resources on Coursera, Khan Academy, modules that are available from MIT, different options. However, what is common to those is that they are oriented towards a computer science audience or a general audience. So either they tend to be generic in terms of providing AI literacy. For example, in the European Union, there's an initiative that has been developing this kind of learning modules, but it's for the general audience. While if you go to the more specialized modules at MIT or Google, they tend to be more technical oriented. But there are no developments that target archival professionals as an audience, or the needs of archival professionals as learners. So there was clearly a gap that we found there that motivated this kind of project. The other aspect that we found lacking when we started a couple of years ago, it was that there was nothing in terms of creating this kind of learning modules based on empirical evidence, talking to archivists, talking to the records managers, talking to the professionals who are actually testing these tools or interested in testing these tools. But it was basically, coming from academics or industry. So we want to hear from other professionals and bring up their voices into the development of competencies and learning modules. So that was the motivation. We came up with this research question. What are learning outcomes, curriculum structure, activities, and assessment that can be designed for archival students and professionals to be able to leverage, make use of and possibly design, at least in being involved into design teams in an informed way of artificial intelligence and machine learning to support ongoing processing, availability, and accessibility of trustworthy public records. Our methodology is detailed in a paper that we're going to be presented at ACES this weekend, actually on Sunday. So I'm not going to be talking a lot about the methodology, but a few aspects of that I'm highlighting is that we wanted to first identify who these professionals were, archivists and records managers, who were testing the waters, who were already engaging with artificial intelligence and machine learning, because it's a good experimental ground to know what competencies they needed to develop in order to make these technologies work for archival, work for the processing of records, and invite them as participants for our study. So we conducted a lead review that focused on identifying those case studies. In 2022, the scope was 2012 to 2022, which is mentioned also as a limitation in the paper because they're having more developments during the recent years, but we're counting on that. And our focus was to identify use cases. What is it that people on the ground are doing, archival professionals with AI and ML? Obviously, it was in experimental levels, right? From that, we want to identify who these people were, archival or records management practitioners involved in these cases, to invite them for semi-structured interviews. And then identify potential material that they were making available, openly available, to be used as didactic material for educational modules and to bring it into the classroom. So that was another possibility that came during the lead review. As a result of that, we identified, 6 case studies developed between 2017 and 2021. You see several of those here. And as you can see, these are case studies who were deployed in actual archives or record management offices. And they use machine learning techniques. You see there natural language processing, entity recognition, topic modeling. Some of them were using applications that have been around for a while. For example, Stanford's EPA that is used for the processing of email records, and that is also using machine learning, while some other of these applications require archival professionals to actually engage with code. So we thought that was kind of an interesting spectrum in which professionals were engaging with these technologies at a very basic level and at a more kind of applied level of technologies that are available off the shelf. These are the other 2 cases that we identified. I'm going to talk about, for example, case number 5. This one came from a records management office and a state archives in New Zealand. Australia. This is New South Wales. The New South Wales State Archives in Australia. Interesting case in which the archivist was asked by the manager to actually experiment with machine learning. And the archivist had a little bit of background in statistics and started learning about how to use Python libraries to experiment with automated classification. So basically starting with retention and disposition schedule that had clear categories, and started labeling records using those categories and testing whether the machine was actually helping classify these retention disposition schedules correctly. So it was a very interesting experiment. The archivist actually made the data available, publicly available, wrote a couple of blogs detailing the process, which is also very helpful in terms of transmitting that knowledge to others. So it's something that, for example, we're including in our learning modules. And this is also something that I have included in some of my classes. since the data is available and the process is available and the code is available. So these were very interesting cases that were identified. Now, these cases, we documented those as case studies that can be brought also into the classroom. So we documented the 6 original case studies, and we have been growing those case studies with case study that we have been developing here at InterPARES, right? As Luciana mentioned, we're working multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary teams that involve academics, but also professionals and archives. So we have been conducting some of those case studies right here within InterPARES. So we're starting to document those to turn it into educational modules. So that is available from the InterPARES website. I invite you guys to check them out. You go to dissemination, there are curriculum materials, and in the future, there are going to be educational modules being published there as well. All of those openly available. Now, we identified about 25 professionals from these case studies. We invited them to participate in interviews in 2023 between January and June. 10 of those invited archival professionals responded and became actually participants in semi-structured interviews. We focus on conversations that try to extract their competencies. What is it that they needed to learn in terms of knowledge? What is it that they needed to learn in terms of developing skills? And what kind of attitudes they displayed, right, in order to make artificial intelligence and machine learning work for them, for the processing of records. So that was our focus. We analyzed these interviews using thematic coding, actual coding, and we came out with these codes and categories that we structure in 3 sets that relate to competencies of knowledge, skills, and attitudes. This is again documented in the paper, but you can see that, for example, in terms of knowledge, these were key competencies that are related to archival principles and practices, and especially those that are being developed within the realm of, for example, research projects such as InterPARES, right? There are competencies that are currently being advanced and informed by the work that we're doing right here in InterPARES. The concept of paradata, for example, is contribution to archival theory that is coming from this engagement with AI and ML. But also traditional considerations of privacy, how do they manage those in the world of AI and ML, enrichment and description, the traditional principles and concepts of archival theory in engagement with AI and ML. There's the competencies related to algorithmic thinking, data analysis, understanding artificial intelligence and machine learning, the pipeline, how is it that people engage with a process to work with these tools, and competencies that are related to critical thinking, critical data, critical artificial intelligence, and machine learning. Now, what you see there is not an exhaustive list of the topics. We actually develop a body of knowledge that is very extensive. This is just an example of some of the topics within each competency, but is way broader than this. It just doesn't fit in the slide. So we just chose a few. In terms of skills, it's about the type of things that people need to do, not only to know, to make artificial intelligence and machine learning work for the processing of records. So a little bit about basic programming skills, especially if they are going to try to develop these tools from scratch and engage with coding and libraries, machine learning libraries, for example. Data-related skills, and this is very in line with what David Mordell calls datification, basically the process of turning records into data that is going to be fed to artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms, and also the critical problems that come with it. It's not only about the technical skills, but in terms of knowledge, understanding the implications of turning archives into data. You guys are familiar with Deva Mordel's work, you know the issues about this. There's the specific skills that are related to artificial intelligence, such as labeling data, training and refining modules, learning about the metrics for evaluation, and coming up with those metrics. That's something that needs to be done to determine whether these models are efficient or not, and comparable to the work that humans do, that archival professionals do, and to determine exactly what the place of these tools in the workflow is. Tool testing and adaptation to workflow skills, it was a critical one. That's the whole point, is just to make it work for the processing of records. And the last one I thought it was interesting is it also shows that archivists, the archivists and records managers that we interview, and we hear that also in the validation, they don't want to become coders. They're not interested in becoming coders. They're not interested in becoming software engineers. They're not interested in competing with them. They're interested in learning enough to do some things on their own, and also to collaborate with technologies to develop these solutions. There's also a little bit about attitude. So we have the knowledge, the skills, but this is more about the being, right? What kind of attitudes can be helpful in getting archivists to this place? Intellectual curiosity about how we can incorporate these technologies into archival institutions is one. Self-regulated learning is another one. Critical thinking and being a team player. Right? So that comes along with everything that I mentioned before. Now, during this summer, we took the result of this research and we presented it to the professionals. So we went to ACA in Canada and also to Expo Tecnología in Latin America. So these are archival professional conferences attended by professionals, but also attended by students. And we conducted workshops in which we presented these competencies and conducted some activities. The people had a chance to rank the competencies, talked about what it was missing, talked about their own experiences. And you can see here, this is the result of the ranking of the two workshops. The first column shows the results of the ranking from most important to least important to the audience at ACA, and the second column, the results in Latin America. And as you can see, there are some matches and some similarities, but also plenty of differences between these audiences that took us to develop a second paper trying to explain these differences. Very interesting. There are some hypotheses, and a more empirical work needs to be done about that. But something that we found is that education and training in Canada happens at the master level, when in Latin America, most of it, the training for archivists and records managers happens at the undergrad level. Obviously, what we emphasize at the master level tends to be more critical, tends to be rely on work experience of people over the years. We target education so that people can also lead in their institutions and become managers, which is different than is done at the undergrad level, in which education tends to be more generic and toward more practical aspects of the work. So that makes a difference. For example, that could explain a discrepancy such as the fact that critical thinking, critical data, critical ML and ethics for archives ranks really high for Canadian, but extremely low in Latin America. There are also some possible explanations, other hypotheses that we propose in the paper, such as the exposure to specific tools. Right? When you have access to off-the-shelf tools, then you don't need to know much about programming or scripting, right? When you don't have access to those, then you probably need to develop those competencies. It's kind of an spectrum of situation that is very contextual. An example that I presented in Australia, the archivists needed to develop competencies related to basic programming, right? Because of restrictions of using cloud services, of uploading records into a system that was going to exist outside of the jurisdiction. So those are contextual situations that demand specific competencies when products are not available. But if the product is available and the legislation allows for specific uses, maybe they don't need to know much about programming or coding or scripting. So those kind of contextual differences shape the needs for education and training. This one was very interesting. There was a perfect match in terms of ranking the skills between the Canadians and the Latin Americans. As you can see, they value, and again, highlights that aspect that people value more the collaboration. Collaboration between archival professionals and technologists rather than just taking on the whole thing. And yeah, you can see that the AI ML skills and basic programming ranks really low here as well. Anyways, I'm just gonna skip because I'm already at 20 minutes. Another outcome of the project so far is that we took this feedback from the archivists and records managers from these validation workshops, and we identified that they want to know more about use cases. Yeah, in terms of education modules, they want to know is like, okay, what is it that people are doing with this processing of records, and how can I do it? Explain that to me from step one to the last step, one by one. So we developed a body of knowledge for these competencies, and then we took this feedback and planned a series of education modules that you can see they map to the competencies. The first one is, the importance of archival principles and how AI and ML plays a factor or could play a factor for the processing of records based on what people are doing. So we took all of these use cases, turned it into educational modules, and put it into that module as a motivation for people to know exactly what is the place of AI and ML in the archival work. The critical aspects, and as you can see, I am biased towards the Canadians, so I think this is key and needs to be taught. So is a module in itself, and the first one, the introduction to AI, is already completed. We're in developing, and it's going to be ready by the end of November, the critical AI ML module. And as you can see, there's indigenous AI ML, which is important in Canada, maybe not as relevant in other countries, but for us, it ranks really up high. So we're dedicating a good piece of content for that. And the other ones, as you can see, very oriented to use cases. AI to enhance access to text and image records, AI to enhance access to audio and video records, AI to support sensitivity analysis of digital records, AI for appraisal, retention, disposition, and large language models supporting description and referencing digital archives. So very oriented towards use cases. We try to make it as practical as possible. These modules, the first one is already published, same place, InterPARES website, the introductory one, and as soon as was developing the module, we're going to be publishing those there. What is next to the project is that collaborators in the team are going to be taking these modules into the classroom and into workshops, professional conferences, and we need to test them. We need to see how people react to this. We need to evaluate them. And just continue improving this. So that's it. Some dissemination going on, but in a nutshell, that's what it is. Thank you.
We've got time for one question.
How to make the question short. I was very fortunate when I was at the NIH and got into management. Initially,
Richard,
I felt that
stand in front of the camera.
I felt very bad because the pressures of being a manager, I didn't have time to do things professionally. Fortunately, NIH put me into a very long management training program when I realized that management is a separate profession. And one of the things that I took out of that as an archivist was that I don't really need to know how to write programs like I had been doing. I need to know how to evaluate technologies for the purposes for which I'm going to use them, which could be appraisal or could be preservation, which gets very technical. In your work on educating archivists in the era of AI, has those kind of issues come up?
Yeah, 100%. Evaluation is one of the key competencies, first of all. Another one that is related to that is that business cases, right? You need to bring that to a business case. if you want to get support from management to continue implementing AI and machine learning for the archives. We heard that from several of the people we interviewed, but also from the people attending the workshops. Yeah, agree, 100%.
Thanks very much.